What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, we got to talk about the great PSN outage of 2025. Now, it turns out, okay, it only lasted about 24 hours. In the grand scheme of things, it wasn't the biggest thing, of all time. It definitely gave flashbacks to the great, of course, PlayStation outage of 2011. There's been books written about it and such. That was an event. That really felt like you were living in a moment if you lived through it, as I did. And, I had just kind of gotten into gaming a couple years before it, like the next gen, right? PS3 360, and I lived through that, and I'm sure a lot of you guys lived through it. And that one, I believe, was 23 days. Okay, this one was about 24 hours. And now I do want to say, okay, these things are kind of important to happen every now and then, because I do think it reminds people of kind of the path that we're going. Now, it's not the worst case scenario, like the absolute worst case scenario, right? But I think it does emphasize that difference between physical media and digital and always online games, right, or single player games. It emphasizes games that are single player that for some reason have kind of like online checks, right, like skill checks. Those are the kind of things I think an event like this kind of reminds people of, right? Because what you had was, well, obviously trophies not syncing, and that was a huge issue back in 2011. But that's a big deal, I would say, to an okay amount of people. But you also had issues with how you could get digital games like today, right, the last 24 hours. So what people were kind of discovering, and to be honest with you, I don't really think much about this because I just kind of always assume that we're screwed as a society if this stuff ever happens long term. But if you have two PlayStations, that's actually where this affected people the most, right? Because one is the primary and one is not the primary. And while I do believe you could actually download games through your library, so if you had, I think I saw people talking about like The Last of Us Part 2. So if you had a game, right, you could download it straight from the store. Even though there's these outages happening, you could still download the game as long as it was in your library and you like quote unquote had it. But the issue is you could only do that if your PlayStation was the primary account. Now, you could argue, well, Alex, it's it only affects people who have two PlayStations. How many people is that? Well, number one, I don't really think it matters, right? It's like, well, if you buy two PlayStations, you're supporting PlayStation, you have two of their consoles, and then something like this happens and they screw you, out of one of them, and it still highlights that main issue, right? A lot of these games that we are basically renting. We have the licensing agreement to them, right? We're allowed to play their games, but do you truly own it? And something like this highlights that, well, okay, maybe nowadays you kind of have it. Even if the, network is down, your primary PlayStation can still kind of have it, right? Well, I mean, that's only true to a degree because it's still a digital download and you still don't really own the thing. But then this highlights, well, if you have two PlayStations, you actually don't own it because the second PlayStation can't actually get to it. This highlights, of course, single-player games or games that are have online components to them. Now, obviously, okay, if the game is connected to the internet and there's an outage, a mass outage like this, the game is just screwed, right? If you were playing like Helldivers, I think is celebrating its 1-year anniversary, that just got screwed out of 24 hours, right? There's not much. I mean, you can complain. I'm sure I could complain, but I mean, is there really any point to that, right? At the end of the day, if the game has multiplayer, it's going to be affected. But again, I think this highlights some of the games that do not have multiplayer, and for some god unknown reason, they're still, kind of crippled by stuff like this happening. Again, that to me would illustrate or highlight, or whatever word you want to say, these games, like, you don't actually have them. Even if you have them physically, you have them digitally. They're single player, they're not online games, but they have some online kind of connection thing to them, like a check, and if it fails that check, you're not able to play the game. So I don't know. I mean, I do believe, in a sense, this is a wake-up call. Not necessarily. I mean, look, like, people are going to do what people are going to do, which largely is nothing, right? Like, people are going to continue to buy digital. Companies are going to continue to push it, and we're going to continue, which we already are in, right? But we're going to continue to enter this age of not actually owning games, and all games will have online-type connections to them, and they're basically just rentals, okay? We're already there. We definitely are already there. We're there with music. We have been for like 5+ years. We're there with movies and television, with streaming stuff. We're there, okay? Gaming is the last one, and gaming is like that last bastion of like physical safety, but even that is still going away. But this should kind of open your eyes and say, okay, what do we really have right now, right? Because something like this happens and it makes you think, okay, what do we have? Like, we have a game. Do we have the game? These games that aren't connected, well, they actually secretly are. It just hopefully makes people more aware of kind of where we are. Again, does it change anything? Not really. Companies continue to push this stuff. People continue to buy. I mean, I've said this before, right? I want to blame companies. I want to blame corporations. You know, it's easy to do that. At the same time, and I mean, I guess to stay on that just for a second, they also push trends, right? Like companies are the ones that want people to do certain things, so they change to do it, and then people will then follow. But then there's that second part. You know, we've looked at stats like 60, 70, 80% of people buy games digitally, right? More people are playing multiplayer games, online games, than any other type of game. So, you know, really what a day like this actually affects is the vast majority of gamers, maybe not you or me, like people that are into like 20, 25 different things, but as I always tell you guys, right, in these videos, the amount of people that just play Call of Duty every day, or just play Madden, or just play Apex, or just play Fortnite, that is the majority. That's like 80, maybe if you want to say like 60 to 80%. That's the majority of gamers. So like that is who this affects, because if you think, okay, well, you can do this, you can do that, you know, you could download this game on PSN. What about just games that have multiplayer components? They're just screwed in general, and that is the majority of people that are playing games right now. Now, that's a sad fact. I don't like that about the industry, but that's kind of just where we're at, right? So let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.